That's really a tough thing, and it's a really tough thing for a young actor to enter into this thinking, "Oh my God, acting is so much fun." But it is truly amazing. But there's a great time. We're going to shoot this shot. You are under fire. That lens is trained on you. They are shooting you. So that is an emotional barrier that needs to get acknowledged, and that acknowledgement is really sensitive.
Yeah.
And it's easy to lose track of it when you have all these forces against you. And it's really easy for them to not feel, like we all said, safe.
Yeah. I think it's also another reason it's really important for directors to have been on camera and to have, like, in some context, endeavored into acting, even just for fun.
Sure.
Like, even if just in rehearsal.
Take
like
an improv class.
Yeah,
absolutely.
like, know how hard it is. It's very hard. Like, acting it's like a trade that you can't look at it and tell how hard it is. You have to, you can't tell until you're there, and it's like, I think that for me, like, especially with docs, I'm always, the thing that I enjoy the most about shooting documentaries is I have to sort of act to become with them and for them to feel like I'm in
immerse yourself.
I have to really make them feel like I'm in the arena with them. And a lot of times I am, because it's just me, the DP, and the sound guy. And so, like, they're going to feel like whatever they're doing, I'm also doing it. I'm as dirty, as tired, as whatever they're doing. And if they're sad, I'm sad. If they're happy, I'm happy. And so, like, me being on that level with them is a really, at least in the way that I shoot, is a really fast way for them to feel like, okay, I can make any decision, mistake I want, and, like, camera will roll, whatever. I trust the director, I trust the editor, and then we just, like, move forward. And more people, more crew, more prep, more stakes makes that harder.
And I encourage young actors to absolutely do stage work as much as I encourage directors to direct some stage work. Because it's that human element gets really consumed by all the technology and all that. So it's really great to have that space.
Well, to me, that's the answer to the question.
Yeah.
The difference between a veteran actor and a new actor is the understanding of the technical aspects of filmmaking.
Yeah.
So assuming that they both have the same talent and being able to emote and to hit the truth of the moment, the difference is the stage actor, who has a pure continuity of performance, and the film actor, who has to understand action and cut and hitting marks and depth of field and the boom in their face and the entire crew all around them, and the fact that there's going to be a cue when the dolly moves. All of these things are the technical machine of filmmaking that a veteran actor understands and can continue to be accurate and truthful and believable in their performance in spite of all of that, or despite all of that. Also, to what you were saying, one of the greatest pieces of advice that I got as a young director is that there are really three types of actors. There's the actor that you have to baby and hold their hand. There's the actor that you have to leave alone and just let them do their thing. And there's the actor that you have to kick in the ass and smack them around a little bit. And it's your job as a director to understand who is who and how to treat them accordingly and how to give each actor what they need.
Yeah.
And everybody's different in that respect. And that's all part of it.
The best experience I've ever had with an incredible seasoned actor who I'm very dear friends with, who were working on a passion project film a few years ago. And she, in the middle of a scene, she knew the script so well and she knew the film so well. And she gave me this note. She was like, I don't think this scene needs as much story focus on me. Like, I don't think, she was like giving me story notes that were so well received, and it was such a beautiful moment to see. I mean, she was essentially asking for less coverage on her. She was like, this scene isn't about me. This is about the B character, and we've worked together so much that, like, we understand each other's working process. But she really understood what coverage means and how the scene was going to edit and what the wide master was doing and how, like, where the focus was going. And her note was, like, very accurate. It was like the scene wasn't about her, it was about the other character, and we didn't need to waste time getting her coverage. And she was essentially at the end, as we were running out of time, she's like, we don't need that. Like, this scene's not about me. Save that for the next, like, setup. And that was powerful.
That is.
I was producing a pilot
extraordinary.
a few years ago, and had a veteran TV actor doing 20 years of TV. And we had a moment of shooting a scene where he said, you know what, if I step to the left here, we don't have to move into splits later. It's going to save us about 4 or 5 setups. And it's just that amount of awareness that all he had to do was move to save coverage later, and being aware of what was happening was so beautiful to see.
That's a gift, though.
Loved that.
That's a gift.
It is.
That's a gift.
I need to ask you, because we're in technical world, a little about talking about seasoned actors, newer actors. You have to explain for everyone here and for our audience, STEM project. It's like a mix of, well, it's not even, it's like the most technical thing that's ever been created. But you had to direct that, produce it, direct it.
Sure.
How were you able to balance the extreme technical standards around it while working with like actors, and whether babying them or kicking them in the ass or whatever that was?
It's a lot of years of doing it, really. It's a unique project that the art is in slave of the technical in that particular instance. In most cases, it's the inverse. The technical has to serve the art, and in that case, we were making a production for the industry to technically evaluate theatrical projection and professional monitors and image manipulation software. So the technical aspects were paramount, and the story was written to serve the technical aspects. So elements were written into the story to tax high dynamic range, and to tax color gamut, and to tax image judder, and all of these things. So the actors are running so that we can move the camera, so that we can test how projection systems handle that later.
Did you talk to the actors like beforehand, and you're like, the camera is going to have to move at this speed, so I'm gonna really have to get you to that speed as well? How did you navigate that relationship and communication with your actors?
Compartmentalizing is the answer to that. So the technical aspects are, and Goldy was addressing this a little bit earlier, are compartmentalized away from the actors as much as possible. I told them all in the beginning when they got the job what it was and why we were doing it, and how there will be moments where it's important for us to slave to the technology. So don't be frustrated by that, because that is the paramount importance of what we're doing here. But at the same time, it was my job as a director to separate all of that from them and just put them in the truth of the moment of what that character was doing and what their action was. And it doesn't really matter that we're shooting 120 frames in order to test software later on that's going to smooth judder for high dynamic range or projection. They don't really need to know that. They need to know that the bad guys are coming and they have to get away, and they have a ticking clock to get away. And so it's understanding all of that and handling and juggling all of that as a director.
Protection.
And protecting the actors and keeping them isolated from it.
Wonderful.
So.
As directors, I do want to circle back to a note that was made about collaboration and feeling safe to ask questions. As directors, how comfortable are you with an actor having an equal relationship with your DP and feeling comfortable to come to them with a technical question, or to come to the first with a technical question?
I would say that's a slippery slope.
Yep.
Same.
Yeah, I was like equal relationship?
Yeah.
Impossible.
Yeah,
Impossible.
it can't be an equal relationship. There has to be an unbreakable trust between the actor and the director to know that as a director, I have your back. I am never going to violate and put a crappy moment of yours. It's always going to be best suiting for what is, I keep saying truth, but that's what it is, it's truth of the moment. But at the same time, often the cinematographer is going to be closer to you than I am. So if there is a technical question, what is the lens, what are we at, how much can I move here,
Yeah.
what's our depth of field, can I miss this mark or not, that's absolutely fair game.
Yeah.
But when it comes to character and story and performance, don't go to the DP. And if you are, then I'm failing as a director. I've lost a trust and I've lost a connection with you.
I think that's also something that's also like a DP's job, is to push those questions, because like they might get them. There's a million different types of actors and everyone's different. So like if your DP knows you and they'll, bump the question to you coolly, and then
Yeah.
like oh, I don't know. I mean, you're great. Talk to Ben about that.
Yeah, but Jay,
Yeah.
you bring up a good point. It is absolutely the director's job to make sure that the actor is aware whom to go to.
Yeah.
And if you have a breach of that, be it a natural one that's no one's fault, the DP's trying to shape the light around an actor who happens to just, it's a quick adjustment, and they say, was that last one any good? And you do have a DP who is just a kind person who's not thinking that way, they're focused, it was really great, whatever. All of a sudden that relationship can develop, and it's really challenging while the bullets are flying to make sure you have that conversation with the director of photography and with the actor without putting anyone on the spot, without saying, no, I'm in charge, look at me, It's really tough, it's tough. But back to the new actors that are the young, unseasoned actors that are potentially watching this conversation, your job is really basic. It's to act. And our job as filmmakers is to provide that space. We keep talking about that over and over. If you have questions and you need answers, use your voice. And as a director, it is so important that when you prep something, you're not just prepping a script or a stage or a space or a set or a lighting concept or camera move or storyboards, that you prep your actors. That your actors have a communication with you long before the day, that they can have that safe space. Also for me, in the material itself, one of the things that frustrates me as a director and has in the past, and I've seen it on other forms of work that I've done around the years, is sometimes actors just don't know what to do. Their business, their space, it's not just blocking, it's just being familiar with being alive and real. And it's a great piece in Talladega Nights that Wilfred is talking, I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yes.
It's so real, it's what makes it so funny. But I like to have, when a script is written and it's greenlit and you're ready to go and I like to make sure that sort of information is there.
Oh.
So that it's not something to worry about or discuss, but it's all part of that prep. It's all part of as much information that can be provided before all of this madness, so that there's an anchor point.
Another piece, speaking way more to the technical, is seasoned actor, someone who's been acting for years and been on a bunch of films, they know that there's only 3 people on set looking at a monitor, the AC, the DP, and the director, and only one of them is looking at performance, one of them's looking at focus, and one of them's looking at framing.
Yeah.
And so, in terms of questions, if a seasoned actor will know if it's a close-up and they come into close focus, they'll look at the AC and they'll say, was that too close? Or the DP. And if they miss their framing mark, they'll look at the DP and they'll say, did I miss my mark there? And if they want to ask about the performance, they'll obviously ask the director. Because the
There's
DP's
one more
not...
person, though, looking at that monitor nowadays, and that's your script supervisor.
Well, or your,
Many of them have a
and
voice.
Or your
and
producer, or
No,
crafty,
exactly.
or-
Yeah.
whoever's in the village, but
14th associate producer of the
We love that. We love this.
producer's nephew.
They have so many
Yeah.
ideas.
But I love that relationship because it is such a issue that us as DPs have on set sometimes. We are shaping light, or we are kind of close, or if we're operating as well, or operators are there, they're the first person that an actor sees after it's called cut.
It's physically
And-
very intimate.
Yeah.
And it's
I
how do
introduce
you
them. I'm really
Yeah,
big on
great.
when I'll introduce them,
Yeah.
oh, here's our DP, here's our camera, especially if I know what we're doing, and actors hey, here's so and so, and I think understanding their function. So I'm big on, just like you said, depending on the actor, if I know this actor, I've worked with them, we're doing this episode or whatever, it's I don't have to do that. It's just meet the person that you're gonna work with today. This is the person in charge of this. For younger actors who are less seasoned, I'll literally be like, oh yeah, this is the DP, this is the camera op, you're gonna see a lot of them. They're gonna be really close to you. And so they know, like you said, it starts to inform them, oh yeah, I can ask this person, is this my mark? I didn't remember, or did I hit this thing? And those conversations, I don't wanna have those conversations.
Is there
with
anyone
actors.
here who likes every question an actor has to go through them first, and then you relay?
It just depends.
Yeah,
on
I
us.
definitely do. I
Okay.
mean, I just feel or I've had times where the DP will give blocking notes to the actor. It's especially if it's a newer DP that I haven't worked with much, and I'm I am very receptive to that feedback. But I feel as a human being, if I'm getting notes from 20 different directions at once, it's going to be overwhelming. So I feel the kind of filtration process is important, just to keep everyone sane.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it
Yeah,
just gets
that
messy.
hierarchy needs to be intact.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
questions about when we're talking about frame size,
Yeah.
depth of field, anything like that, you would prefer actors to be hey, Ijaaz, frame size, what are we looking at?
Absolutely,
Great.
because I think sometimes I'm someone who I don't really like. I prefer actors to not worry about that stuff generally,
Okay,
or
yeah.
like, especially with like the type of stuff I work on the most. Like you get like artists who like want to see the frame like as it's happening, and I'm like, God,
Yeah.
please
Oh, yeah.
no, like nothing good is gonna come from that.
Like you said about celebrity thing, yeah. That's,
Well, that,
Yeah.
that's the key. I mean, it just keeps echoing. We keep talking about the same thing, and you're talking about it. You want to have that control. It's great that you want it.
Yeah.
It is very often as we progress in our careers that you don't get that.
Yeah, we have to learn how
And
to.
you
like,
have a seasoned
hold on
actor
to
who
it.
fully understands the fact that it is the DP that is going to not make their nose look too big. And so they are going to talk to the DP about that
Right.
constantly. And if you interfere with that, then you're fucking with their mojo.
Right.
And you got to be really careful. And it's about safety for everybody and compartmentalizing the best you can and giving them the space to be themselves. But I will say the more seasoned and the larger egos that develop because of that seasoned thing, man, I mean,
I think-
you and I both seen it. I mean, wrestling with
But I think the more
Bears.
season they want to, the more I direct, the less I want to talk on set. Number one.
Mhm.
Number two, I think more seasoned actors, the less they want to. They want to talk to people they have to talk to.
Correct.
Right.
I've not had a horrid experience with any actor I've ever worked with.
It's
thus
coming.
far. But celebrities, those have been like doing branded content, doing stuff for Vogue, doing stuff for this, like those that stuff has been a little, whatever. But with narrative work, I've been fortunate, right? And I think what's interesting is, like you said, you want that control, but it really, to answer your question, Indy, it just depends on it just depends on the conversation. Like I don't want to know, and I don't need to know everything. But if the actor is concerned about their nose, well, by all means, keep talking to the DP to figure out your nose situation.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Right.
I don't want to solve that. I can hear it. I'm around. It doesn't matter.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
I think a really important caveat too for the like young actors or up and coming actors watching this is like with experience is not necessarily with ego.
Mhm.
Like
Yes.
I've worked with a ton of very experienced actors that are not egotistical.
Sure.
They want to be respected and they want the set to function, and like dysfunction on set is frustrating as it should be. But like there's a split for sure. People, when they reach a certain point, they're either going to become maybe prima donnas or they're going to become incredibly wonderful people to work with, or maybe sit in the middle. But
Well, the scary thing is, at least in my experience, having been an actor, being raised by actors, is that one of the default modes, especially for an insecure young actor, is to place ego for protection.
Yeah.
And that can be a really difficult thing to
Yeah.
navigate as a director too. They
Yeah.
may have no experience whatsoever, they may have no season, and yet they show up with, I'm here, and it's their own protective mechanisms.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing for young actors to understand coming to the set, that if they want to really propel their own career and they want to be respected and move forward within this technology, because we're really just talking about technology and capturing what they do, no ego, no problem.
Yeah.
No matter if you're inexperienced, use it to your advantage. That, nerves make great performances.
and to remember that like your relationship with the directors you work with is sometimes a lifelong relationship.
Oh,
So
yeah.
like make those relationships count, make them personal, make them collaborative. If the writer is there, get to know the writer. Like that's also a relationship that might be a lifelong relationship. Or the producers, like it's like for someone who hasn't done a feature before as an actor, like you're with some people for 30 days and you're maybe doing overnights for
Or
2
8.
weeks or whatever, yeah.
Good luck.
And so it's like make those relationships matter, make the film together, and again, I think it just comes back to asking questions. Like if you don't know what the boundary is, ask. If you don't know what's happening, ask. Be vulnerable. Know that the director, if they're a good director, is going to be vulnerable right back with you, and they're going to receive your vulnerability in kind, and you're going to get to know what that space feels like and learn incredibly quickly, way more quickly than being defensive and holding back. And
I would say that I think a good director, and you guys all probably do this, is you're trying to kind of disarm your actors and get them comfortable from the moment you get in contact with them, right? So like the phone calls or things like that. I'm constantly trying to get whomever it is, right? And doubly so with celebrity work. It's like the moment they show up on set, you're like, okay, I'm trying to break through the barriers. This person, trying to get them to kind of just like, so we can get to screen. So I think, like you said, knowing as an actor, like a good director is seeking those moments to kind of help you, to disarm you, so you can kind of get in the space and be comfortable. And knowing that before you got there, trust me, they've had the conversations to make sure that you're safe and comfortable.
Yeah.
Usually on set, my AD and my scripty are like my left hand, and like my DP's like my right hand. So those are the people that I'm constantly talking to, and those are people that I also give permission to talk to the actors in a particular way, right? Because sometimes it'll be like a continuity thing I won't remember, but I'll be like, hey, go in right now to this actor because I can tell they're trying to figure out which hand they picked, and just like lightly tell them, you know, whatever this is. But I think figuring out, or I guess a good actor trusting, like you said, that a good director is also trying to bridge that gap, and you guys are doing that dance from the moment you sign up to the project, from phone calls all the way until you guys wrap. It's like a constant like checking in. I think we all kind of probably do our own method of checking in with the actors, right? I like to go to like when they're in hair and makeup, make a joke, act like, you know, we're not about to shoot this super important scene and start talking about life, and then, you know, kind of, you know, build a shorthand, especially if we haven't been able to rehearse.
Right.
But I think a big thing it is kind of, like you said, getting to that place where it's like, okay, they trust me enough that they know to come to me, and they know the people to talk to about the other things that I could care less about, or, you know, also makes them feel comfortable on set.
So I'm sorry.
You go ahead.
For new actors, I would say the default is if you have a question, always ask the director.
Yeah.
That should always be the start.
Yep.
And then you figure out who to talk to, whether it's continuity or the AC or whatever. I actually started my career as an actor, mostly to understand and be intimate with the trade and be able to work better with actors. But I know what it's like when the director is not giving you what you need, and they're not giving you the feedback, that the natural inclination is the operator. That's the person who's right there, right? So when you're done and you're vulnerable, that's the person you look to give you the nod, and because you're not getting it from somewhere else. So for me as a director, if that's happening, I feel that there's a failure and a breakdown.
Yeah.
So if an actor is doing that, then now I'm in my head thinking, oh crap, what am I doing wrong? Okay, I have to work to make this relationship better or fix this. It's better as a younger actor to make sure you're always defaulting to the director than figure it out.
That scenario is panic-inducing.
Yeah,
You describing that scenario, it's like,
Yeah, because I've AD'd and I've seen that so many times. I was like, yeah, I know exactly. It's like either the director waits too long to come for the note, or they're like getting caught up in something else, and I'm like watching this relationship form, and I'm their AD like, damn. Or I'm like, if I'm gonna like, hey, I was like, hey, just waiting for notes, fly in to talk to your actor, because they're like waiting, and then of course the camera op's gonna tell them it's great, and then they're gonna start being invested because the actor's good, and they're like, you know, and then so it's I think it's very.
This brings up a great point for new actors.
Yeah.
That back to that force that we're all there to protect them from. They need to be cognizant and understand that their moment, that they're there for, that they're ready for, that they've rehearsed for, is being captured by an ensemble of musicians that are playing, and there's so many moving parts, and you're gonna have to let it breathe. You have to let these moments breathe, not just in your performance, but when you hear cut, let it breathe. Just give it a second. Let everyone do their job. Let everyone have their moment, because the notes maybe you have as a director that you want to give right away, but then you do have the producer that says something, or an agent that has something to say, or a DP says, man, that angle is horrible, we got to reblock it, or whatever it is. And you need, and actors can't force what they need all the time on the filmmakers. Yet the filmmakers have to be cognizant that they are in need at all times.
and I think a really helpful thing too is when actors just ask for what they need. Like, hey, I need a quick 5.
Yeah.
Like, just give me some quiet for a minute. Like, I need to
Yeah, I love
sort of drop in. Like, even if you're shooting golden hour and the sun's already hit the horizon, it's like, okay, do your thing. Like, I'm not gonna get the shot. It's like if it needs to be done, it needs to be done. It's not gonna, if the performance isn't gonna get there otherwise, and like you need a second and the set is really loud or some other extenuating circumstances like throwing you off, then like say what you need.
And that's always there.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's what we were talking about earlier. Like, when do you use that thing? Like, when do you have like the poise and the experience to understand like that thing is always there? A good director is never gonna not allow you, even at the most pinnacle moment, to be like, oh, I can't. Like, you be like, hey, I just need a second. I need it. We're not gonna deny you that, but when do you use that moment so we don't like, I hate you forever?
Yeah, but actors need to also understand that it's okay, and directors also need to understand it's okay to say, this moment isn't that important. We're gonna get it. You don't worry so much right now. You got it. It's back to trust. Don't worry about it. The sun's going down. We actually don't really see you, and we just need you to, turn and look in the sunset and shut the fuck up. And here we go. So that's the thing. But the actors need to be prepared to do some backting sometimes.
Yeah.
We are not necessarily always looking at your face.
I think
And
that's
just do it.
that's a really interesting part of the technical process, like beyond just lensing and things like that, is like is an actor experienced with how editing works. And I think like in my generation at least, where a lot of actors are making their own content, and you know you may
Which
have
is a
made
curse, by the way.
Yeah.
it's not a
necessarily.
I think it's a curse. I personally, I think, and I just come from a different generation. So when I grew up and really started in this business, and I think probably more similarly to you, you know, the DP was an alchemist. Okay, there was like a chemical process happening in order to capture these things, and only they knew how to do it, and they had a respect because of that. And then the lines sort of blur because now the technology, which is amazing, I'm not complaining about it, but it's opened itself up for everyone to have a better understanding of what it is that we do. And all these online things also open up, which is a good thing. Where the curse comes in is if an actor is on set to act with a tremendous knowledge of editing, that can infiltrate their performance.
I think
And
that's
where it
I think
gets
that's a
scary.
personality thing though. Like
Yeah.
anybody's knowledge of another department, like my knowledge of how a DP works could influence how I communicate with them and really piss them off. And like,
Yes.
how many of your friends worked on a web series that they all made together in the last decade?
Oh,
Ev-
all of them.
All of them. And so like a certain number of those actors are gonna like know how a sequence works. Like how do you sequence a scene?
Yes,
there
but that
are
universal
pieces.
knowledge is going to influence things moving forward in both
But
good
not if they're
and,
a good actor.
and negative
If
ways.
they're a good actor, then I don't think it'll bleed into their performance. I think they'll use it as a tool. to
Unless
make
it
sense of the
distracts from, if you're after something and then they have their own idea of what you're after,
Yeah,
you're in a big
That's
trouble.
having a good collaboration, right? Like
It
you bring
is.
people on
It
who
is.
are after the same thing.
I think the point
It
I'm trying to
is.
get to is like if you have any understanding of how movies are edited, and you know that the editor's job is to wrangle all of those jazz musicians into a sequence, and like the editor is the storyteller.
100%.
And so if you know that as an actor, like you know that the melody of the film is made in the edit, and you know that like not every piece is created equal on set, and like to your point, like we just need you to shut up and exit, like the exit is important. It
Absolutely.
might be the beautiful exit on the rooftop and it's shot from a helicopter, and it's like this moment doesn't need to hit the same way, we just need beat, beat, beat out.
Correct.
And so like I think I've had the experience that actors knowing how edits work now is quite powerful, and that helps communicate ideas sometimes easier, where like you can say like this is a transitional shot, you know what I mean, like this is going to be a shot that's moving us from
Yeah, that's short.
you know, if we're going left to right and we're going to do a transition and then we're going to be moving frame right to frame left, like knowing how that works and knowing how the visual storytelling is going to happen once it's linear, I think is really useful to
Oh,
convey.
it's certainly
Yeah.
useful to be aware of the environment that you're in and the work that you do. I mean, car salesmen understand that, you know, cars have spark plugs or whatever, you know. You have to have an understanding. But, you know, what my point was, where I think it can be a curse, is that there's just so many moving parts. And when you all are there to compartmentalize those moving parts and to direct them to achieve something, the last thing that you need is for someone to sort of think that they know more about your job than you do. And that's where it gets a little bit crazy, because it's so available, the information is so now available, that you have a lot of actors who are totally focused on performance and that's all they want, but they're super stoked about, like they have a project they're about to do and they really want, so they really dove into, I mean, YouTube and go anywhere, you can get all this information,
Yeah, I know
and all
what
of a sudden now you're thinking that when you should really be feeling something.
Yeah.
And it's the
But the road doesn't go both ways either. Like actors may be forced by the way that the industry is working now to make more content, but directors aren't forced to start acting.
that's true.
And writers and producers aren't forced to start acting. So like the knowledge isn't transferred both ways, and that's where I think it like ultimately is a personality thing. Like if you are an actor and you know acting is your craft, you're going to be using all of this knowledge as a tool to make you a better actor.
Yes.
If you're maybe unclear on that and you want to be more of a do-it-all person, you know, where you're maybe directing at one point and you're acting, maybe you paid for this film to happen or whatever it is, like, yeah, that's challenging. That's your EP also being in front of the camera, and that's like
I
a
think
tricky thing.
so fun.
It's also like our job as a director to get them out of that headspace if that comes up.
Yes.
You know, like that's my job when I'm on set. Is if I always communicate to my actors, it's like, okay, this is where this shot I think will happen, and this is the importance of it, and this is what I need from you. And if they're not giving me that because they're too caught up in that, then it's like, all right, let's take a step back. Let's look at it then from a different like angle. Like how are we going to work together? And I think like what you're saying, I think it comes down to personality and how they take that information that we're giving to them, how they translate it into their craft, And if they get too caught up in it, then it's our job to get them out of that
Sure,
headspace.
absolutely.
But I've always found that the more information they have and the more knowledge they have of every department, including editing, helps rather than hinders.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly. And I think it kind of gets to the heart of this whole discussion, which is, in my opinion, actors need to know all of this, and they need to be able to dismiss it.
That's
Right.
the key.
I need to know that there's a camera to my right, so if I start talking to you like this,
Yeah, you
they're not
can
going to be
do
able
that.
to use this.
Right.
It doesn't mean that my conversation isn't authentic or that what I'm saying isn't authentic. I'm just aware of what's around me, and the actors need to be the same. They need to understand that transitional moment, so they're not like, why am I walking over here? This makes no
Mhm.
sense to me. Why am I doing that? Well, you're doing it because I have to cut from here to here, and if you have to explain that, it just
Well,
takes
you want
time.
to.
If they know and you can say it's a transitional moment, great.
It's
It's
back to
shorthand.
that trust.
Yeah.
And I think the reason I bring up editing is like, if you had to distill films down to the three most important roles, to me it's writing, acting, and editing. You can scrap everything else, make it terrible, shoot it on mini DV with a bozo director who's 13 and a half years old, and you can still make a watchable movie.
Don't listen
If-
to this.
But I mean, to be fair, I mean,
Right,
movies
right.
work when the writing's good, the acting's good, and the editing is good,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
and the sound.
The director
Yes.
stitches it all together.
The-
But
yeah,
it's like
Yeah,
those
we
are
just
the pieces.
inform. We
The
just
pieces.
Those are the
inform.
pieces.
That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
I
We
think
just really
speaking to everything, I think for me, I see both sides where it can be bad. I've been on set as an actor where we're doing a take and I'm in the headspace of, that's not gonna work because this. And I'm like, I should not be in this headspace
Right,
right
that's my
now. I
problem.
need to get out. And I remember the director coming up to me and being like, you went to director Sabrina, I saw it in your eyes, go back to the character. And I was like, yes, can I do it again? And then I just had to take 5, get into character, and stay there because I was like, that should not be my concern right now. But I also see it to the point of exactly, everything kind of runs smoother and a little bit easier when you have actors who understand the process and other people's jobs because they know, even when doing sound checks, like they'll start talking as soon as they see the boom operator, whoever's doing mixing is laving people up there like, oh, do you need to test my sound right now? Or they'll start talking at the level that they plan on speaking in the scene rather than just sometimes newer actors will be like, hi. And it's like, no, say your lines. They know to do that stuff.
Yeah.
They understand how different departments work, and I think that really transitions everything. And I think speaking to content creation, I use TikTok as a way to kind of show my journey as a director, especially being like a young Black woman in film. So that's kind of just what I've been doing, and I'll notice that, to what you're saying of it all being out there, I'll notice if I'm sharing my experiences as a director with here's what people ask me, like, what do you look for when casting an actor? And I'll just explain, what I look for in auditions and what the casting directors I've worked with have looked for. But I'll notice comments where people are, they're really looking for the nitty-gritty stuff of understanding each department and what does this do, and they think that because it's coming to them from TikTok that it's like expert advice. And I think that's where that gray area is of you don't want to necessarily walk into something being like, oh, I know what this does
Correct.
because I learned it from this. I know what this does because this, da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
And then you're in your head about, oh, this person's job and this, that, and the third. And I think even being on sets recently, I've kind of met actors who are coming into it with that mindset, and when we're cutting, they're kind of talking to different departments about their job rather than, and the director's like, I need you to actually stay in it because we're gonna go back into it.
That reinforces my point. It's just there's a difference between understanding what editing is and knowing what editing is. And understand that editing is, putting this here and that there is one thing, but actually knowing what that means is really empowering. And I think, to your point, it's great to be empowered with actual knowledge, but there's so much out there that these preconceived notions are, it's kind of like if your doctor says, don't look it up online. You know what I mean? It's sort of that thing. It's just there's a lot of diluted information out there, and you don't. I personally think it can be a curse when you have a young actor who thinks they know it all.
Slippery slope for sure, but
Yeah.
I mean, I think his personality, and as you guys were talking, I kept thinking about worst case scenario, right? You know, every director loves a wonder, right?
No,
You're
yeah.
working with an actor, and imagine we get to a point where you're doing a wonder and the actor goes, I mean, we could just like, cut, and you could just cut it. And you would die. You would die. That's where I would say like information gone wrong. Like, I don't want, like,
It happens.
I would die, right? That's
One thing I'm
I would
curious
die.
about is like who's worked with non-actors and had great experiences with them.
Me.
yeah,
Like why? What made them great?
all the things we talked about
Malleable.
earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can take somebody that's there because you think they can do it. I mean, I've only worked with actors that are non-actors that I think can do something. That's why they're there. But you're capitalizing on whatever it is. Maybe it's a speech pattern or a way of they do things or whatever it is, and you're there to capture it. But I would say that someone that's eager, that wants to do it, that has no experience at all, is someone that is listening and someone who is open-minded to this. And if they're not, you work to get through those barriers. But that sort of non-convoluted focus on the moment and that piece and why you're there is really spiritually lifting.
And what's funny
It's
about that is
wonderful.
like that sits to the other end of that spectrum, which is like they don't know anything,
Yeah.
and that becomes like their greatest
It's
strength.
their everything.
And like once you start knowing things, you have to know enough that you can finally get over the hump and let it all go.
Correct.
And then you can return back to like that's background noise and here I am.
Yeah.
And with non-actors, sometimes it's awful, but
Oh.
sometimes it's like really beautiful where they're just being a kid.
Yeah.
And they're gonna do that the whole movie, and
Yeah.
like they're gonna know like when the camera's here, stand here, and go to there,
Yeah.
and you break it down into a bit of a structure.
Sometimes it's really good not to know why.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's really powerful just not to know why.
I'll
Just do it.
say I worked with a kid actor on a project like a year ago, and it was his first time ever being on screen, or acting in any capacity, and he was like this really really smart kid with just incredibly hyperactive, and it was like my job was just kind of corralling him. But by halfway through the day, he started to understand what the camera was doing and what we were doing, and then he would start pitching me ideas for what the camera would be and where it would go, and it was I kind of learned to tune it out, but then the ideas started being really good, and it was that much harder to tune out because I was I need to maybe listen to this child. So a kid who didn't know anything, right? He'd never been on set in his life, and it's interesting. I think also just being receptive to things from strange places. But it's also, it comes to the thing of I was working with the DP who I trusted implicitly, and I had a crew around me that I trusted implicitly. So because I trusted all the people there, I could kind of run with some strange ideas the 7-year-old was just pitching me.
That is a unique.
Yeah.
It's coming for your job.
Yeah. Seriously, this is very, very disorienting.
He's just I just act part time.
Yeah.
But I think you definitely hit it on the head. I think it does. There is a wealth of knowledge that does take you over a particular hump, pending your personality, and I think it is. It's really a toss up. But I think for directors, we just have to take it all.
Yeah.
We just have to kind of. We have to literally, like you said, tune some stuff out. You're just you get a mixed bag.
I think something that I kind of have a question for you is with music videos. I earlier this year kind of started doing that, and I think a lot of the artists, they had done music videos beforehand, so they were pros at talent, being on camera and stuff. But I think also where knowledge does come into play is I did one earlier this year, and he's an NFL player, so this was his first time. He's just now started his music journey, and being on set, he didn't really understand why things take so long. Why does it take so long to set up a light? What am I paying for in terms of, why do I have to pay a guy $800 a day for this? Why do I have to, why do you have to switch the lenses and things like that? And the first video we did, the process was so long, and it was my first time having to wrap my head around, okay, I'm working with someone who really has a lot of questions and wants to understand that technical. And I guess the second time we had done it, before we got to set, we did a second video for him, and I kind of sat down and explained all the different departments and what they do and why things cost so much money, and explaining why you have to rent a light for this much and why a camera lens is this much, and kind of explaining all of that. And I guess that's where he was able to understand moving forward. And then when we went on set that second time, it ran much smoother than the previous times. And explaining to talent why you can't shoot a video in one day or things like that. When dealing with talent and non-actors in the music video world, how do you communicate to them shots, marks, and the entire realm of how a set operates without breaking their comfort levels?
It's interesting because I think I have a feeling that working with artists is probably most similar to working with celebrities, even if they're not quite celebrity level yet. Where I think on the practical side, like the financials of or the costs of film set, I think it definitely people outside the industry who don't understand how much things cost and don't understand what goes into stuff. So there's definitely I don't know what the word is, but a period of shock, I think, at how expensive everything is. I tend to work with the same artists a lot, so I think with each relationship we start to, or each project, we build more and more of a relationship. And I think in terms of on set and working with marks or technical stuff or just performance, I think that then you kind of learn where the actor or the how much of an artist is an actor, and I think the musicians that I like to work with the most are actors, and I think can really fall into a scene and they're performing and they're bringing an emotional life to the project, and I think with that you're kind of treating them like you would any other actor, right? But I think you do run into things where I've never been on a narrative project where the performer's been I need to see playback as it's happening. But I've been on a lot of music video sets where the A&R or the artist is he needs to see playback and he gets to. And that's definitely not something that I love. And I have tried to explain to artists that is not going to help them, but I have been overruled on that more than I haven't been. Yeah, I mean, I think it's like with anything else, it's treating people as intelligent collaborators and finding what works in the specifics of that relationship. I find with artists, they tend to be a little bit more sensitive to the image of it all. I think actors, especially good actors, lean into vulnerability, and I think with artists, when I say artists, I mean musicians. I found that it takes a little bit more for them to feel comfortable being vulnerable, and sometimes being vulnerable isn't even what they want from the project, which is an interesting challenge for me. But yeah, I mean, it's always a thing that you're kind of reinventing every time.
And just to hop in on that as well, coming from a music video space, starting out, I think you get to kind of synthesize things in a way that you can't get away with in the narrative space. You can just be it's A plus B. Right. It's just that. There's no more. We don't have to intellectualize. Right. We don't have to contextualize. It's just this and this. And just it's similar to commercial spaces where you do the biggest way for an artist or celebrity talent to trust you is to kind of see the thing. Yeah. And kind of you show them, once you show them playback a few times, yes. Or you're or you encourage them with you look cool. It looks great. Yeah. It looks exactly, or even sometimes I'm really big on if there's their manager, their assistant, somebody else that they trust, because they just met me today, that confirms, oh yeah, this looks amazing, things just start to move so much smoother. So I think it is finding the words to synthesize it. You don't have to over-explain, kind of just, this is what it is, and then giving them that kind of praise. Sometimes it's false, but you give them that praise so they can get comfortable and just kind of do the thing, for sure.
And the best part about music videos, sometimes you just lean over to the talent, wouldn't it be kind of weird if we tried this? And then they're yeah, let's do it. And you don't really need to explain anything else.
Yeah. Yes. So accurate.
Yeah.